The shuttle descended through clouds of orange dust. Ambassador looked through the small window and saw for the first time. It was a harsh planet with red mountains and dark rivers, nothing like the green forests of Earth she had left behind 3 months ago. She was 34 years old. She had spent 10 years learning alien languages and cultures. She had negotiated peace treaties on 4 different worlds. But this mission was different. They had never welcomed outsiders before. They were known across the galaxy as warriors who respected only strength. "We are beginning our landing," the pilot announced. His name was One, a young man with calm eyes. He had volunteered for this mission knowing the dangers. Nodded and checked her formal clothes one more time. She wore a simple dark blue suit with a small Earth flag on her chest. In her bag, she carried gifts chosen with great care: a bottle of wine from her home province, a book of human poetry translated into the language, a small painting of Earth seen from space. These were not weapons, they were offerings of friendship. The shuttle touched down on a landing platform made of black stone. Through the window, could see rows of soldiers standing in formation. They were tall creatures, almost 8 feet high. Their skin was gray and thick like armor. Their eyes were small and yellow. Each one held a long blade at their side. "They do not look happy to see us," one said quietly. "They do not know us yet," replied. "That is why we are here." She stood up and walked to the shuttle door. Before opening it, she took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She had prepared for this moment her entire career. The door opened with a soft hiss. Hot air rushed in, carrying a strange smell like metal and smoke. Stepped out onto the platform alone as the had demanded. One would wait in the shuttle. An officer approached her. He was bigger than the others, with scars across his face. He wore a red cape that showed his high rank. "You are the human Envoy," he said. It was not a question. "I am Ambassador of Earth," she replied in his language. She had practiced it for 2 years. "I bring greetings from my people and a wish for peace between our worlds." The officer stared at her for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace," he repeated. "Humans speak of peace because they are too weak for war." Kept her face calm. She had expected this. "We speak of peace because we have seen too much war," she said. "We have learned its true cost." The officer turned without responding. "Follow me. The High Council waits." She followed him across the platform and into a massive building made of the same black stone. The hallways were wide and tall, built for the large bodies. Felt small walking through them, but she kept her head high. Others watched her pass. Some whispered to each other. She caught words here and there. Weak, soft, prey, animal. She pretended not to understand. The council chamber was a circular room with a high ceiling. 5 sat on raised seats arranged in a half circle. They wore elaborate armor decorated with symbols of their families. In the center sat the oldest one, with white patches on his gray skin. "I am High Commander," he announced. "I lead this council. You may speak human." Bowed slightly as a sign of respect. Then she stood straight and addressed them. "Honored leaders of the people, I come to you not as a representative of power, but as a messenger of hope. For too long, our peoples have been strangers to each other. We have heard stories, but we have not spoken. We have watched from far away, but we have not met." She paused and looked at each council member in turn. "Earth wishes to change this. We offer friendship without conditions. We offer trade that will benefit both our worlds. We offer cultural exchange so we may learn from each other's wisdom." She reached into her bag and pulled out her gifts. She placed them on the floor before the council. "These are small offerings from my world. Wine made from fruits grown in sunlight. Words written by our poets who dreamed of the stars. And an image of our home, the blue planet we love." The council members looked at the gifts with expressions she could not read. Then High Commander spoke. "These are strange gifts. Where are the weapons? Where are the tributes of value?" "We do not bring weapons to friends," said, "and we believe these things have great value, not in gold but in meaning." Another council member leaned forward. Her name was the only female on the council. "You say you want peace, but we know humans are a young species. You have barely left your own star system. What do you have to offer us?" Had prepared for this question. "We offer what young species always offer: fresh eyes that see things in new ways, energy that does not know the word impossible, and a desire to prove ourselves worthy of respect." She took a step forward, showing no fear. "The galaxy is vast and old. Many species have risen and fallen. Those who survived did so by making allies, not enemies. We come to you because you are strong and we respect strength. But we also believe that true strength includes wisdom, the wisdom to see opportunity when it comes." The chamber was silent, could feel the weight of their eyes on her. Finally, High Commander stood. He was ancient by standards, but his body was still powerful. "You speak well for a small creature," he said. "We will consider your words. You will be given rooms in the visitor quarters. Tomorrow we will give our answer." Bowed again. "Thank you, High Commander. I look forward to beginning a new chapter between our peoples." As guards led her away, she allowed herself a small moment of hope. The meeting had gone better than expected. The council had listened. They had not rejected her immediately. In her simple room that night, she wrote a message to Earth. "First contact successful. Council is considering our proposal. Will report tomorrow with their decision. Out." She did not know that it would be her last message home. She did not know that High Commander had already made his decision before she arrived. And she did not know that across the galaxy, her people would soon receive a very different kind of message, one that would change everything. Slept peacefully that night, dreaming of the blue skies of Earth and the peace she hoped to build. In the council chamber, the 5 leaders spoke in low voices about the true purpose of her visit. "The humans send their diplomats to test our defenses," said. "They think we are fools." "Perhaps she speaks truth," suggested. "Perhaps they truly want peace." "Peace is for the weak," replied. "Tomorrow we will show the galaxy what happens to those who think they can approach thee as equals." The decision was made. The trap was set, and the small human woman slept on, unaware that she had only hours left to live. The morning sun rose red over the capital, woke early and prepared herself for the council's answer. She put on her formal clothes again and practiced her speech of gratitude. She was ready for negotiation. She was ready for difficult questions. She was even ready for rejection. She was not ready for what actually happened. Guards came to her door before the first meal. There were 6 of them, far more than necessary for an escort. They did not speak. They simply pointed at her to follow. Notice something different in their eyes. Yesterday they had looked at her with curiosity or disgust. Today there was something colder, something final. "Is something wrong?" she asked in their language. No answer. They led her through different hallways than before. These went down, not up. The walls became rougher, older. The air became cold and damp. A terrible feeling grew in her stomach. They emerged into a large outdoor arena. Thousands filled the seats around the circular space. In the center stood a raised platform. The 5 council members were there, dressed in their finest ceremonial armor. But that was not what made her heart stop. Next to the platform stood a tall wooden post, and beside it waited an executioner holding a curved blade that gleamed in the red sunlight. "What is this?" demanded. Her voice did not shake, though fear ran through her body like ice water. High Commander stepped forward. His voice boomed across the arena, amplified by hidden speakers. "Citizens of the Empire, yesterday this human creature came to our world claiming to want peace, but our intelligence has discovered the truth." The crowd roared with anger. Continued, "She is not a diplomat. She is a spy. She came to learn our weaknesses and report them to her masters on Earth." "That is a lie," shouted, but her voice was lost in the noise of the crowd. Two guards grabbed her arms and dragged her toward the platform. She struggled, but their grip was iron. They were 5 times her weight and twice her height. "I am a diplomatic envoy," she screamed. "This is a violation of galactic law. You cannot do this." Laughed. "Galactic law, made by weak species who fear to fight. They do not follow such rules. We make our own laws." They threw her to her knees on the platform. The hard stone cut through her pants and scraped her skin. She looked up at the council members, searching for any sign of doubt. The female counselor would not meet her eyes. The others stared down at her with cold satisfaction. "I have evidence," said, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Everything I brought was examined by your security. There were no weapons, no spy equipment, only gifts. Check again, please." "We have checked," said. "We found hidden transmitters in your gifts." It was a lie. She knew it was a lie. Her gifts had been checked by Earth security before she left. There was nothing hidden in them. But truth did not matter here. This had never been about truth. "You planned this from the beginning," said quietly. "Why? We offered you friendship." Leaned close to her. His breath was hot and smelled like rotting meat. "Because your friendship is worthless. Your species is worthless. You are prey animals who somehow learned to fly between stars. We will take everything you have, and the galaxy will watch and learn what happens to those who think they can stand equal to the—" He straightened up and addressed the crowd again. "Today we execute this spy. Tomorrow we begin our conquest of the human worlds. The empire will grow." The crowd cheered with savage joy. They dragged to the wooden post and tied her hands above her head. The executioner approached, testing his blade with one finger. A line of blue blood appeared where it touched his skin. "Do you have final words, human?" asked. "We are not without mercy." Looked at the crowd of screaming aliens. She looked at the executioner with his sharp blade. She looked at the red sky above. And she smiled. It was a small smile, sad but somehow peaceful. "I do have words," she said. Her voice carried clearly across the suddenly quiet arena. "Not for you, for my people who will see this." She turned her head toward the recording devices she knew were broadcasting this across the galaxy. "To Earth, to everyone watching, I came here in good faith. I carried only hope in my heart. I wanted to believe that different species could understand each other." A tear rolled down her cheek, but her voice stayed strong. "I was wrong about but I was not wrong about peace. Do not let my death start a war of hate. Be better than that. Be better than them." She paused and took a breath. "Mom, Dad, I love you. I am sorry I cannot come home. Take care of my garden. Remember me when the cherry blossoms bloom." Her voice finally broke on the last words. She closed her eyes and waited. In the shuttle that still sat on the landing platform, one watched on a small screen. Tears streamed down his face, but his hands worked quickly. He was transmitting everything back to Earth. Every word, every image. The galaxy would see this crime. "Tell them," had said before she left the shuttle yesterday. "If anything goes wrong, make sure everyone knows what happened." He was keeping his promise. The executioner raised his blade. The crowd fell silent, wanting to hear the sound of death. Opened her eyes one last time. She would not die with them closed. She would face her end as she had faced everything in her life, with courage. The blade came down. An ambassador of Earth died on an alien world, far from her home, far from the cherry blossoms she loved. The crowd erupted in celebration. The council members congratulated each other on their show of strength, raised his hands and accepted the praise of his people. None of them noticed the small human shuttle lifting off from the platform. None of them paid attention as it raced toward the edge of the system. None of them understood what they had just done. One pushed the shuttle engines to their limit. Tears still wet his face, but his jaw was set with determination. He had the recording, he had last words, and he had a message to deliver. Behind him, they celebrated their victory over a single unarmed woman. They believed they had shown strength. They believed they had proven their power. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in the history of their species. The recording would reach Earth in 3 days. It would be seen by every human who had access to a screen. It would be played on every news channel, shared in every home, discussed in every government building. And when humanity saw what had been done to their daughter, their sister, their ambassador of peace, something would change in them. Something ancient and terrible. Something that had been sleeping since the last great wars of Earth. The thought they knew about war. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In her final message, had asked her people not to hate. She had asked them to be better. But some things cannot be forgiven. And some debts can only be paid in blood. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. It was a beautiful spring day. Cherry blossoms were blooming in parks across Korea. Children were playing in schoolyards. People were drinking coffee and planning their weekends. None of them knew that everything was about to change. Admiral Sung-ho Park was in his office at United Fleet Command when his assistant rushed in without knocking. The young officer's face was white as paper. "Sir," he said, "you need to see this now." Park was a man of 62 years. He had served in the military for 4 decades. He had seen battles and peace. He had lost friends and gained enemies. Very little could shake him anymore. But when he watched the recording from his hands began to tremble. He watched speak her final words. He watched the blade fall. He watched the celebration that followed. He watched it 3 times without speaking. Then he stood and walked to his window. Outside, the cherry blossoms moved gently in the wind. The same cherry blossoms had mentioned in her last message. "Call an emergency meeting," he said quietly. "Every fleet commander, every government leader, everyone, now." Within hours, the most powerful people on Earth gathered in the Great Hall of United Government. Presidents and prime ministers, admirals and generals, scientists and diplomats. They came from every nation, every culture, every background. They had all seen the recording. The hall was silent when Park stood to speak. No one moved. No one whispered. The weight of what they had witnessed pressed down on everyone like a physical thing. "You have all seen what was done to Ambassador," Park began. His voice was steady, but there was something dangerous beneath it. "She went to the in peace. She carried gifts and hope. They called her a spy. They murdered her, and they broadcast it as entertainment." He paused and looked around the room. "In her final moments, she asked us not to hate. She asked us to be better than them." A long silence. "I have considered her words carefully. She was a good woman, a brave woman, perhaps a better person than any of us." His eyes hardened. "But I am not a diplomat, I am a soldier, and I know that some actions cannot go unanswered, not because of hate, but because of duty." The president of the Eastern Federation spoke up. Her name was Ha-Young Lee, and she had personally approved mission. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" Park turned to face her directly. "They have declared their intentions. They murdered our envoy and announced plans to conquer our worlds. This is not a misunderstanding we can talk through. This is a declaration of war." "We have never used our full military power," another leader said. "Not since the unification. Our fleet was built for defense, not conquest." "I am not proposing conquest," Park replied. "I am proposing response. They believe we are weak because we chose peace. They need to learn that our peace was a choice, not a necessity." The debate that followed was short, not because people did not have concerns, but because the recording had done something to everyone who watched it. They had seen a young woman die with courage and grace. They had heard her speak of cherry blossoms and love. They had watched aliens celebrate her murder like a sporting event. And something old had woken up in them, something that humans had tried to bury for centuries, the part of them that protected their own, the part that would walk through fire for family. Had been a stranger to most of them, but in her death she had become something more, a daughter, a sister, a symbol of everything humanity had hoped to be in the galaxy. And the had killed her. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in history, Earth's United Fleet would deploy at full strength. Park spent the next 3 days planning. The human fleet was not small. After the unification, the nations of Earth had combined their space forces into a single military. 3,000 warships, carriers and destroyers, medical ships and supply vessels, and weapons that had been built in secret, hoped to never be used. "We designed our ships for defense," Park explained to his officers. "We made them to protect our colonies from pirates and small threats, but we also built in capabilities for larger conflicts, just in case." He pulled up a holographic map of space. Their empire spans 40 systems. Their fleet numbers approximately 2,000 combat vessels. They have never fought an enemy who could match them. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They have also never fought humans. On the day of departure, millions gathered at space stations and launch facilities. They came to watch their military go to war. They came to say goodbye to sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. And they came to send a message. Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Remembrance. It had been renamed that morning. Before, it was called the Defender, but defense was no longer their mission. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving transmissions from across the fleet. The crews want to speak." "Open a channel, let them." What followed was something Park would never forget. Voice after voice, ship after ship, crew after crew, they spoke the same words. "For." It became a chant, a prayer, a promise. "For." The fleet entered faster than light travel together. 3,000 points of light stretching into lines and vanishing toward distant stars. On Earth, people watched them go. Then they went back to their lives. They went back to their jobs and their families. They went back to the normal things that fill normal days. But nothing was normal anymore. In schools, teachers tried to explain to children what had happened, why their parents were crying, why soldiers were leaving. They told stories of courage and sacrifice. They talked about standing up for what was right. In homes, families gathered and watched news reports. They learned about their history of violence, their culture of domination. They learned that this enemy saw them as prey. And slowly, something began to change. Humans had spent centuries trying to overcome their violent nature. They had built systems to promote peace. They had taught their children that words were better than weapons. They had reached for the stars hopping to find friends. But buried deep in their hearts was something else. A survival instinct shaped by millions of years on a dangerous world. A refusal to be prey for anyone. They had woken that instinct. Across the galaxy, alien species watched with confusion and concern. They knew humans as peaceful traders, curious explorers, friendly neighbors. They did not know what to make of this sudden transformation. "The humans have lost their minds," some said. "They cannot defeat they will be destroyed." Others were not so sure. "We have always underestimated them," an old elder warned his council. "We see their soft bodies and assume weakness. We see their short history and assume inexperience. But there is something in their eyes now, something I have not seen before." "What is it?" a young counselor asked. The elder was quiet for a long moment. "It is the look of a species that has decided to stop being afraid, and that is the most dangerous thing in the universe." In the cold darkness between stars, 3,000 human warships raced toward destiny. On board each one, crews prepared for battle. They checked weapons and systems. They said prayers to gods old and new. They wrote letters to loved ones that might never be read. And in the silence of space, they made a promise to a young woman who had died far from home. They were coming, and they would not be stopped. They detected the human fleet 7 hours before it arrived. Their early warning systems were the best in the galaxy. They had plenty of time to prepare. Not that they were worried. High Commander stood in his war room, watching the holographic display with a smile on his face. 2,000 points of light represented his mighty fleet, arranged in defensive formations around the... "How many human ships?" he asked. 3,000, High Commander, his tactical officer reported. They have brought their entire military. Laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the stone walls. Excellent, we will destroy them all in one battle. Then their worlds will be defenseless. His officers joined in the laughter. The other council members watched with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The humans are emotional creatures, Counselor observed. They have come blindly for revenge. They are not thinking clearly. That is their weakness, agreed. Emotion clouds judgment. We will use it against them. He gave orders to his fleet. Form a welcoming formation. Let the humans come close. Then crush them between two forces and wipe them out completely. They had conquered dozens of species using these tactics. They saw no reason why this would be different. 7 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching the enemy formation on his display. His face showed no emotion. His hands were steady. Analysis, he ordered. 2,000 enemy vessels, Admiral. Standard battle formation. They are trying to draw us into a pincer movement. Park nodded slowly. They think we are too angry to see their trap. His tactical officer, a sharp young woman named Min, looked at him with something like admiration. They do not know us very well. No, they do not. Park opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Park. We have arrived at our destination. The enemy expects us to charge blindly into their trap. We will not give them what they expect. He paused and took a breath. Execute Pattern 7. All wings move to assigned positions. No engagement until my command. The human fleet began to move, but not forward. Instead, it spread out in all directions, forming a massive sphere around the position. It was a slow, careful movement that took almost an hour. In the war room, confusion began to spread. "What are they doing?" demanded. "They are surrounding us, High Commander." "Surrounding us with inferior numbers," he shook his head. "They have spread their forces too thin. Order our fleet to attack the weakest point." The fleet surged forward toward what appeared to be a gap in the human formation. Their warriors shouted battle cries. Their commanders dreamed of glory. They did not realize the gap was a trap. As the first ships entered the gap, the human vessels on either side opened fire, not with the standard weapons they had analyzed, with something new, something they had never seen before. Beams of concentrated energy sliced through shields like they were paper. Missiles that should have been stopped by point defense simply vanished and reappeared inside the ships, detonating in engine rooms and weapon bays. In the first 60 seconds of combat, 200 warships were destroyed. Stared at the display in shock. What is happening? Their weapons, High Commander. They are cutting through our defenses. Our shields are not stopping them. That is impossible. We analyzed their technology. They should not have anything like this. But they did. What did not know was that humans had been preparing for war for longer than anyone realized. Not because they wanted it, but because they feared it. They had built weapons in secret, hidden in research stations far from prying eyes. Weapons designed to end conflicts quickly and completely. Weapons they had hoped to never use. Now those weapons were being unleashed for the first time, and the results were devastating. Park watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. He felt no joy in this destruction, only duty. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "the flagship is attempting to contact us." On screen, his face appeared. For the first time, there was fear in his yellow eyes. "Human, I demand to know what weapons you are using. This is a violation of galactic conventions." Park stared at the alien who had ordered its death. When he spoke, his voice was cold. "You speak to me of conventions. You murdered an unarmed diplomat. You called it entertainment. You announced plans to conquer our worlds." He leaned forward slightly. "There are no conventions between us. There is only justice. We can negotiate. We can pay reparations. The execution was a mistake." "A mistake," Park repeated the word slowly. "Her name was, she was 34 years old. She loved cherry blossoms and poetry. She believed in peace so strongly that she walked into your trap with hope in her heart." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "And you killed her for entertainment." Opened his mouth to respond, but Park cut the connection. "All ships," he announced. "This is Admiral Park. I am transmitting one message to the enemy, then we finish this." He switched to an open channel that would reach every ship. "This message is for the people. 3 weeks ago you killed our daughter, you killed our sister, you killed our hope for peace. Then you celebrated." He paused. "Ambassador asked us not to hate you. She asked us to be better. I have thought about her words every day since she died, and I have decided that she was right. We should not hate you." Another pause. "But she also asked us to be better. And being better does not mean accepting injustice. It does not mean allowing murderers to go unpunished. It means standing for what is right, even when it is hard." His voice hardened. "You killed our daughter. Now meet her brothers and sisters, and understand that this is not hate. This is consequence." The transmission ended. Park turned to his officers. "Complete the operation. Leave no military vessel intact, but do not target civilian structures. We are not them." The battle lasted 4 more hours. It was not really a battle. It was a systematic destruction of the fleet. Human ships moved through the enemy formation like predators through a herd, picking targets with cold efficiency. They fought bravely. Their warriors did not flee or surrender. They died at their posts, still trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. By the end, not a single warship remained functional. Debris fields spread across millions of kilometers of space. 2,000 years of military might have been erased in a single afternoon. The human fleet had lost 37 ships, terrible losses, but nothing compared to what they had inflicted. Park stood on his bridge, surrounded by exhausted but triumphant officers. The victory was complete, but there was no celebration. "Sir," Min said quietly, "what happens now?" Park looked at the hanging in space before them, a planet of billions of people who had cheered its death. "Now we teach them what we learned long ago, the price of war." He opened a channel to the planetary government. "This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet. Your military is destroyed. Your empire is ended. We will now discuss terms of surrender, and you will listen very carefully." The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The prey animals had shown their teeth, and those teeth were sharper than anyone had imagined. The universe would never see humans the same way again. The empire fell in 11 days. It was not just the battle at the. Human forces moved through space system by system, dismantling military installations and accepting surrenders. They did not massacre. They did not enslave. They did not burn cities or poison fields. But they were thorough. Every warship was destroyed. Every weapon factory was dismantled. Every military base was occupied and cleared. They would never threaten anyone again. Admiral Park stood before the High Council chamber on the 11th day. the same chamber where had spoken her words of peace, the same place where had ordered her death. Was there now, but not on his high seat. He knelt on the floor in chains, along with the other council members. Around them stood human soldiers in battle armor. "High Commander," Park said, "you have been found guilty of murder, violation of diplomatic immunity, and crimes against humanity. Do you understand the charges?" Said nothing. His yellow eyes were empty. The proud warrior who had laughed at human weakness now looked like a broken old creature. "You will stand trial," Park continued. "Along with every member of this council, the trial will be broadcast across the galaxy. Every species will see the evidence. Every species will witness justice." He stepped closer to the fallen leader. "Ambassador asked us not to hate. I will honor her request. I do not hate you, I pity you. You had the chance to make an ally. You had the chance to learn from a people who had mastered their own violence. Instead, you chose to be what you have always been." "And what is that?" asked in a hoarse voice. "A bully who mistook cruelty for strength." The trials lasted 3 months. The galaxy watched as evidence was presented, recording after recording, document after document. The truth was undeniable. They had planned death before she even arrived. They had manufactured false evidence of spying. They had intended to use her execution as the start of a conquest. All 5 council members were found guilty. They were sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote asteroid station. They would spend their remaining years watching the species they had despised build a new order in the galaxy. But the story did not end with punishment. Park returned to Earth as a hero, but he refused that title. "I am not a hero," he said in a public address. "Heroes are people who believe in peace so much that they risk their lives for it. I am just a soldier who did his duty." He paused and looked at the crowd gathered before him. "We won this war, but wars are not things to celebrate. Every death on either side was a tragedy. Every ship destroyed represented lives ended. We should not take pride in destruction." The crowd was silent, listening. "Instead, we should take pride in what comes next." Ambassador dreamed of a galaxy where different species could be friends. She died still believing in that dream. The best way to honor her memory is not through more violence. It is by building what she wanted to build. He smiled sadly. "So that is what we will do." In the years that followed, humanity became something unexpected. Not conquerors, not rulers, but guardians. The human fleet patrolled the shipping lanes and protected weaker species from pirates. Human diplomats helped negotiate peace treaties between old enemies. Human doctors traveled to distant worlds and treated the sick. Human teachers shared knowledge freely with anyone who wanted to learn. They did not forget, though. They could not forget, but they chose not to let hatred define them. A memorial was built at the exact place where died. It was a simple structure, a white stone pillar surrounded by a garden. Cherry trees from Earth were planted around it. Every spring, they bloomed with pink flowers. The inscription on the pillar was in both human and languages. "Here fell Ambassador of Earth. She came in peace. She died with courage. May her sacrifice remind us all what we should strive to be." Millions visited the memorial. At first, their government required it, but over time, something changed. The visits became voluntary. Parents brought their children to learn about the woman they had killed. Teachers used her story to teach about the costs of pride and cruelty. A generation later, a young named applied to be the first of his species to attend human universities. He had grown up visiting memorial. He had read her writings. He had watched recordings of her final speech 1,000 times. "She believed we could be better," he wrote in his application. "I want to prove she was right." He was accepted. He became an ambassador for his reformed people. He spent his life building bridges between species, just as had hoped to do. On the 20th anniversary of her death, a ceremony was held at the memorial. human and stood together, remembering. Admiral Park, now very old, gave the final address. His voice was weaker than it used to be, but his words were still strong. 20 years ago, we lost someone special, someone who saw the best in others, even when they did not deserve it. Her death taught us many things, about war, about justice, about the cost of underestimating those who seem weak. He paused and looked at in the audience. But she also taught us about forgiveness, about hope, about the possibility of change. Today, former enemies stand together as friends, not because we forgot what happened, but because we chose to remember it in the right way. He touched the white stone pillar gently. I hope you can see this. I hope you know that we tried to be better just as you asked. We are not perfect. We never will be, but we are trying. Cherry blossoms fell around him like pink snow. Rest now. Your work is done, but ours continues. The ceremony ended. People dispersed slowly, many stopping to touch the pillar or leave flowers. Human and children played together nearby, unaware of the history of pain and healing they represented. In a quiet corner of the garden, one stood alone. He was middle-aged now, with gray in his hair and lines on his face. He had never forgotten the woman he had watched die through a shuttle screen. He placed a small bottle at the base of the memorial, wine from Earth, the same kind had brought as a gift so long ago. I kept my promise, he whispered. Everyone knows what happened, everyone remembers, and maybe, just maybe, we built something good from all that pain. The wind moved through the cherry trees. The pink flowers danced in the air. Somewhere far away, a human child laughed while playing with friends. The galaxy had changed, not through conquest, not through fear, but through the example of one woman who believed in peace so much that she died for it. And in the end, her dream came true. Not because humanity was weak, but because they were strong enough to choose kindness even after cruelty, strong enough to build even after destruction, strong enough to forgive even after betrayal. That was the true legacy of, not the war, not the retribution, but the peace that came after. Peace through strength, strength through compassion, compassion through sacrifice. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars, and they would never let themselves or anyone else forget how they got there. For always for